there is an opportunity tomorrow night at the Whitty Observatory. I'll probably be there. I will be there by 8, but more maybe like 7:30-ish. So, but and then next week, the chapters we get through tonight, those assignments will be due. And remember, last week I handed you out the Unit 3 assignment sheet, so you should have that. So the fact that in 2 weeks we have your Unit 3 exam, that means after class, next week we'll have that review session. So next week when you come, I'll give you your review sheet. So this Unit 3, is all about the planets. Okay, and then October 18th is a Sunday. Your first 2 lab write-ups are due. So I think I need to go backwards. Does this look like the right slide we need to start with? Okay, good. Okay, so things to know about Venus, right? It's got thick clouds. I think I talked about this before. Actually, Venus, if you were to have a powerful telescope to try to look at the surface features of Venus, you couldn't see through the thick clouds. I think I mentioned the best we can do actually is have send down a radar and look for basically radar signal coming back to get the topography of Venus. So the pressure on Venus's surface is 90 times that of Earth. So I don't know if you've seen some of those documentaries about how would life evolve, for instance, on a different planet, but it would have to have a different structure to handle that pressure. So Venus's clouds are basically condensed sulfuric acid, okay? And Venus has a crazy amount of carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. Now, we looked at the surface temperature of Venus last week, and we said it's crazy hot. And actually, it's crazy hot related to its greenhouse effect. One of the things about here on Earth, have you ever noticed, like if it's a cloudy day, and clouds kind of, like it's intermittent clouds. So you have sun, and then you have a cloud coming between you and the sun, and you're like, oh my gosh, it cooled off, crazy, okay? So clouds definitely have a cooling effect. But as far as Venus goes, like I said, the greenhouse effect kind of takes over. So again, about the greenhouse effect, and actually on the next slide, I'm going to do one more thing about the greenhouse effect and kind of bring Earth back into the discussion a little bit. So Venus has 200,000 times the carbon dioxide of Earth, and like we said on a slide a little bit ago, or last week, that without the carbon dioxide in its atmosphere, its surface temperature would be -40. I think it should be Celsius and Fahrenheit. Oh, I mean, that's the temperature. I think 40 is the temperature there. Fahrenheit and Celsius are the same. Anyway, we did that slide. Okay, so here we're kind of comparing Earth and Venus a little bit. Okay, so Earth and Venus are kind of sister planets, and they're very similar sizes. Remember, Mars is just a fraction the size of the Earth. So if we were to put the planets, consider them at similar distances from the sun, I think this is how this works, okay? If Earth was moved to Venus's orbit, so if it was moved closer to the sun, okay, it would, our temperature would only increase about 30 degrees Celsius. So we definitely would not catch up with Venus. Okay? But, so what makes Venus so hot is that carbon dioxide in its atmosphere. We're going to take a look at Earth and the concern about carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere, how it actually can kind of be, it's called a, if you take meteorology, it's called a positive feedback mechanism, not because it's a good thing, but basically it makes it accentuates the issue. Okay. So here we go. Well, we'll get to that. So a little bit more about Earth. It is definitely unique. Okay, it's got water in all 3 phases. It's got solid water, liquid water, gaseous water. Okay. And if you've heard that Mars was in the news this week, it was in the news because Mars actually, they caught it flowing on Mars, which I think that's kind of a stretch. I don't think it was flowing. The thing about Mars,
this for a specific situation,
yeah,
which leads me to believe that it's insanely rare.
Yeah, I think the thing about Mars is if you were to take a slushie, like go to Dairy Queen and buy a slushie, and you were to put it on a hill and let it kind of roll down, that's basically what they saw. Okay, but the Earth has liquid water, which is unique. The Earth has oxygen in its atmosphere, but if you study where that oxygen came from, you don't have to, like, it's not a stretch to recognize we didn't always have oxygen. So the way this worked is looking at where the oxygen came from. And actually, if we didn't have oceans, if we didn't have liquid water, large bodies of liquid water, the oceans, we wouldn't have had those green algae actually taking in carbon dioxide and spitting back oxygen. Okay, so that's where we got our oxygen from. So we talked about being geologically active. Now, being geologically active does not necessarily mean a planet has what's called plate tectonics. And that took me, it was this semester that I started catching along how that works. Plate tectonics is unique to Earth. That basically means that the Earth's lithosphere is like broken up into little slabs that float around on the liquid mantle. Okay, even geologically active planets, that's not the case. Okay. So here on the left is you can see these yellow fractures. Okay, this is kind of showing you where the major plates are on Earth. And we've seen this slide before. You recognize the convection cells where it's hot here, and hot mantle rises, it cools down, then it sinks, and it forms these convection cells. Okay, so that's unique to Earth. We are just so unique. So this up here in the upper right-hand corner kind of shows you what plate tectonics can do for a planet. So you may be familiar with basically our land masses started out as kind of a super land mass, and as the plates have spread apart, has relocated. The continents have relocated. So I have, okay. What else is unique about Earth? Well, related to Earth's oceans, we have this mutual respect between Earth's oceans and carbon dioxide. Okay, so I already mentioned that actually the green algae in the oceans took in carbon dioxide and via photosynthesis turned that carbon dioxide basically into oxygen. But the other thing is, if anybody drink pop in here, I think I'll drink pop. So what makes pop fizzy is carbon dioxide. And so actually that's another thing that our oceans do, is they take in carbon dioxide. And they can actually take carbon dioxide out of the carbon cycle by that carbon dioxide being converted into like little sea animal stuff, little skeletons and stuff like that. Okay, so oceans and carbon dioxide are kind of important. So you figure that on planets that don't have oceans, they don't have this, it's called a carbon dioxide sink possibility. So here's one thing about it though. So carbon dioxide will warm the atmosphere, okay? That actually will make more precipitation fall. Precipitation is a good way of going ahead and scrubbing carbon dioxide from the air. So more precipitation, basically it removes carbon dioxide from the air and makes it part of groundwater or oceans or whatever, okay? And in doing so then, it cools down, okay, the planet cools down, okay? And as it cools down, precipitation is less. And if precipitation is less, that's kind of your scrubbing thing. And if precipitation is less, your carbon dioxide can build back up again. Your carbon dioxide builds back up again. You know, it gets warmer again. You get more precipitation. The precipitation removes the carbon dioxide. It cools down. Carbon dioxide builds up. So we actually kind of have this kind of building up, you know, going down, building up, going down sort of relationship. And it has to do with the precipitation in large bodies of water. Okay, of carbon dioxide. So that's been going on for a long time, and I'll show you here in a minute carbon dioxide levels in the Earth's atmosphere. Okay. So the problem is we in our everyday lives rely oftentimes on burning fossil fuels for our energy needs. And fossil fuels, whenever you burn anything, you get water vapor and carbon dioxide. It's unavoidable if it's a carbon-containing compound when you burn it. So carbon dioxide from human activity has injected basically an extra dose of carbon dioxide in that cycle I just mentioned, okay? And it can definitely just throw that carbon or carbon dioxide cycle off. Another way that actually we are increasing carbon dioxide is by removing some of the plant life, major plant life, I mean we're talking major plant life, that otherwise would have done kind of like the blue algae did, you know, taking carbon dioxide, spit back oxygen. So our deforestation efforts does do that too. Okay. So with this extra carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere, okay, that actually then adds another layer to warm the Earth. And as the Earth warms, it will increase precipitation, which is great because then precipitation can scrub out carbon dioxide, right? Okay. But we keep injecting more carbon dioxide in. So basically the precipitation can't keep up with the carbon dioxide that we're putting in. So it's broken. Okay, it's broken. Now what does that mean? Well, I don't know. I mean, where do we go from here? I don't know. But definitely it's broken. So this actually is giving you just a hint for what surface temperatures are doing, okay? Now these are in, I think, units of degrees Celsius, and it doesn't look like much, but it's hard to get a fix on what is the temperature on the Earth. Well, you have to take a look at the entire Earth. But we're up about 0.6 degrees Celsius, which again doesn't seem like much, but it is. So here then actually is kind of a look at carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere. So kind of what I described is carbon dioxide has been swinging a long time, okay? So these two little graphs down here go back thousands of years ago, way before we started burning fossil fuels, right? So definitely we see the swing in carbon dioxide. This one in yellow, that's the swing in surface temperatures. So in general, as the carbon dioxide went up, okay, so also did the surface temperatures, okay? They kind of go neck and neck. So then enters this one right here. Now this one actually, we kind of kid in my meteorology class, we would like this job to measure carbon dioxide in one of the Hawaiian Islands, right? So basically since 1960, they've been looking at carbon dioxide amounts go up and up and up. So I think this is kind of old data. I can't remember when, but it was a big milestone when we went above 400 parts per million, ppm, carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. Now you see some squiggles, okay, and again we talk in meteorology how those kind of squiggles, actually those are yearly cycles with plant life, but the overall general trend is up. So what scientists are great at are looking at data, okay, and they're also great at using like models, like computer models. This whole thing about this hurricane right now that's in the news, kind of hammering the Caribbean or something, I don't know, East Coast, because Christie was in the news, so I don't know what he could be doing about this hurricane, but Chris Christie. But the thing about the hurricanes and actually this, what they have in common is I heard that depending upon what computer model you use, you're going to have a slightly different trajectory of where the hurricane's going to be. So they use computer models to anticipate where a hurricane's going to be. They also use computer models to basically fit in data to see, to understand the data. Only the overall climate models, okay, that take into consideration the humans and our increasing carbon dioxide into the Earth's atmosphere, only they fit what's observed. So small changes, 0.6 degrees Celsius, who cares? Well, if you live on a tiny little island, you care because the sea level temperatures are rising. Your island is shrinking. Okay, and I don't have it on the slide, but maybe you've heard too. A little bit warming actually makes microorganisms that used to be confined to the equator. Now it's warmer beyond the equator, so you can get diseases and that sort of thing actually migrating towards the poles. Fire ants. Yep. They can actually now survive farther north than they used to be able to. This actually, aside from all of that, this is simply showing you, this is the continent of Greenland, and the white is the ice sheet, so you basically see the amount of ice sheet we have left now versus what we had, what was that, 30 years ago. So perhaps the storms will be more intense. Well, that's what we need. Increased health stress on humans. The whole diseases going towards the poles, that's kind of what I said. Loss of habitat for the polar animals. One more slide. So this last slide just kind of takes a look at basically what we've been covering in this chapter. Okay, we talked about how scientists actually can get a sense for what's going on inside these terrestrial planets. We talked about how size makes a difference because the smaller objects like the moon and Mercury cooled off and solidified way before the larger objects did. Okay, we also talked about if you look at the surface of the planet or the moon or whatever, you can get a sense for what sort of erosion patterns may have been going on. Actually, that's one of the reasons why long before they caught Mars in this kind of freaky sort of slushy moving downhill, the erosive patterns on Mars really shows that they had liquid water, at one time. All right. So before we take a break, let's go on to the next chapter. Switching gears. Okay, from the terrestrials to the gas giants. Yep. Gas giants, Jovian planets, okay. And hopefully this is going to fit right in with the other stuff we've been talking about. Okay, so those are all kind of synonyms. Gas giants, Jovians. So remember that when we talked in the last unit, why they got so big is because they were on the other side of the frost line, and they were actually to a place where those hydrogen-containing compounds like methane and water and ammonia, that they could go ahead and condense. And then once they got a certain size, the reason that the gases don't condense, hydrogen and helium will not condense. The reason they finally condensed because gravity, or they didn't condense, but they stuck around because of gravity. So there's definitely a difference in size. These are listed from how close they are to the sun. So the sun is over here. Of course, we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. You can kind of see the two orange buddies and the two blue buddies, okay? They actually kind of have similarities like that. Jupiter is the largest, okay? So you can kind of see some stats under Jupiter, although I really like that figure in your textbook that I showed you that kind of had all the planets. But you can see that it would be 318 times the mass of the Earth. Saturn. Notice that actually, and we'll be talking more about this, they do match up. If I go ahead and draw kind of a split there between the orange guys and the blue guys, if you look at what their composition is, that's why they're orange. And hydrogen-containing compounds. I think I told you guys before, the formula for methane is CH4. Okay, and actually it's methane that is making those guys blue like that. somebody recently said, well, what planets can we see? Blah, blah, blah. And I think if it's clear enough for next week, I think we can have the telescope go to, I think it's Uranus. I'll have to double check. But Uranus actually is, you know, and there's where a go-to scope is nice, because you're like, I can't find Uranus. Okay, but the go-to can. Uranus through the telescope looks like a blue little tiny disc. You can tell it's not a star. And you can say, yes, I saw Uranus. Okay, so we'll cross our fingers. So I think I mentioned before that all of these planets have rings, even though you just see Saturn's rings. Well, actually, they all have rings, okay? And they all have kind of band features. They all have moons, and actually, if you were to sink down, you would sink and find, basically, they swallowed a terrestrial planet. So at the core of them is a terrestrial planet. So, density. Density is an important characteristic of a planet. I remember that in Unit 1, when we kind of looked at all the planets together, I said that Saturn is so light, it's not very dense, that actually if you put it in a big bathtub of water, it would float. Okay, so density basically is you take a certain amount of matter, and it's like the volume that that matter occupies. When we talk about black holes, okay, we're going to be talking about basically taking a certain amount of matter and cramming it into a very small volume. That creates a black hole. You could take a piece of paper and make it into a black hole if you crammed it, made it dense enough.
Here's a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you were to stand on the surface of Jupiter, surface, of course, because it's not super solid, you know,
Yeah.
how far down would you fall until you stopped because you were about of equal density?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably
kinda
die before then, though.
disturbing,
Probably
but-
gets real hot.
I think so. There would be a point, though, wouldn't there, where you'd be like,
You just become
you'd
floating.
find your own density. Ugh. So going from that thought to, don't these pillows look inviting? Okay, so yeah, these pillows actually trying to kind of represent kind of the outer part of Jupiter. The thing about Jupiter is that actually the matter that makes up the planet Jupiter has basically squished into kind of something relatively dense. The larger it is, the more gravity can pull it together. So here is a look at the densities of Saturn and Jupiter. Okay, so Saturn is less dense, Jupiter is more dense. Makes sense, like the pillows. So, so one thing about it, and I mentioned this, I don't know if you guys remember it, but actually our core, the Earth's core, actually has a solid inner part and a liquid outer part, okay? So here's the deal. The way you get a solid inner part, even though it's hotter, is to, with a lot of pressure, you can make something solidify. With a lot of pressure, you can make gas liquefy, okay? A good example of making gas solidify is when you get dry ice, when you guys go get dry ice at the store, basically you're getting carbon dioxide that has been pressurized and cooled down, but pressurized to make that gas basically join together into a solid. Okay, so it's solid CO2. So with that in mind, then, I know it seems weird, but actually we end up with liquid layers in the interiors of these planets. So there's Jupiter, kind of a slice, kind of like you were saying, Kane, falling down through Jupiter, and what it looks like.
So they do have rock cores.
They do have rock cores. It's like they ate a baby terrestrial planet. And it's kind of like planetary differentiation, kind of early on. Okay,
So it's super high pressure in the cores, right?
super high pressure in the core.
So could it be possible for the methane planets, the blue planets, to have rivers of flowing liquid methane on the core?
It's possible. Yep, dinosaurs thrive. No, but yeah, that's kind of what's being shown here. So you have gaseous hydrogen, okay, here. Okay, this is beyond the clouds, and I think it'd be hard to say where the clouds stop and basically the surface begins. And we're going to look at the clouds here in a minute, a separate slide. But you have gaseous hydrogen, then you have liquid hydrogen. You increase the pressure, and basically you have something strange. The hydrogen is behaving, I don't know, I'd have to double check what this means, but it's metallic hydrogen, okay, which is weird. Okay, and then actually that blue part there is you have rock and metals and hydrogen compounds. And yeah, you could have down there, you could have liquid and then a solid core. This would be liquid right here, and this would be solid, I think. So I mentioned it's like it swallowed a baby terrestrial planet, so kind of drawn to scale, there's the Earth and there's the core of Jupiter. So I think it was my other class that actually, well, it's kind of a long story, but there was this mission, Galileo, that actually, it was going around the planet Jupiter, and one last mission, they basically sent it through Jupiter's clouds, knowing it would not survive. But they got all sorts of cool information about it as it fell. Yay, Galileo. So now there's the other gaseous planets. Here we have the orange guys, and here we have the blue guys. And you can kind of get a similar sense for their layers as you go towards the core. All right.
She just ninja past you?
All right. So the Earth, we talked about the fact that the Earth has a magnetic field. And remember we said that the Earth can only have a magnetic field because it's ooey gooey inside. Okay, if the Earth had solidified, okay, it would not have a magnetic field. We call its magnetic field its magnetosphere. And actually, we talked about how Mars, somebody needs to tell this to Rush Limbaugh, that actually Mars does not have a substantial atmosphere because it cooled down and lost its magnetic field. Okay, Mars does not have an atmosphere because it lost its magnetosphere. So now you figure, do these gas giants, do they have any sort of liquid to them? And the answer is yes. So again, you can have charged particles that are spinning around as the planet rotates on its axis. So for sure, just focusing on the planet Jupiter, for example. Okay, so here we see Jupiter at the center, kind of drawn to scale. Okay, it looks like the tiny little Jupiter in there. So there's Jupiter, and that kind of mass sort of ghosty looking thing is it's kind of the size of its magnetosphere. There's Jupiter's magnetosphere.
Kind of looks like a spider.
It does. It kind of has a similar shape to Earth's magnetosphere, where kind of downwind from the sun, it's kind of elongated. Okay? And actually, just like we can have northern and southern lights, okay? So also Jupiter has northern and southern lights. Okay, those are the aurora borealis. Okay? Kind of cool. All right. Check planets weather. Let's go ahead and take a break, and because the next 3 slides kind of go together. And looks like we got like at the bottom of the hour, because I got 6:20, so 6:30 we can resume.